Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of This Is My Bourbon Podcast. I'm your host, Perry. I'm so happy that you all are here with me. This is a little bit unorthodox for us. And I know somebody who has never been on the show before is sitting here with me. He is a legend in the bourbon community. He laughs because he knows it's true.
It's not true.
No, it is true.
It's not true at all.
Tim Gunderman, at Timmergund.
Yes.
If you want to follow him on social media. We're at Whiskey Weekend. This is one of the coolest things I've ever done in my entire life.
This was an amazing adventure.
And I wanted to document this in a way that was unofficial, but had turkey noises in the background, Travis. No, it's okay, buddy. No, so Will and the Greeze from the PodCask have done so much work to make sure that this is one of the most curated and awesome and exciting weekends of all time. And I think they've done a great job of it.
Totally.
I mean, people from Utah, California, Texas, all over the freaking United States have shown up to Kentucky for this weekend.
Do you know how many bourbons I tried yesterday?
How many bourbons did you try yesterday?
30.
Holy crap. Is that like at an official count?
100% official count.
Wow, dude.
So that's between what we did with Dixon Deadman, what we did at Buffalo Trace, and what everyone brought to share.
And we brought a lot to share, too.
Yes.
So that's crazy.
What's even crazier is from what was brought to share, only about 10 of the 30 was from that.
I just want to say that, one of the big points I want to make about this episode, this weekend, is that you may be skeptical about the community, or about the fact that, people are shameful about, how much they drink bourbon. But what's important is the community.
Yes, totally.
And there are so many people who are here that I've never met before. And all of a sudden, we're all friends.
Oh, 100%. I mean, so for that, I've probably not met 90% of the people here.
Did we meet at Southern Whiskey Society?
If we did,
it was at the after party.
Society, yes.
it was at the after party, and we probably had more than 30 pours.
I had way too many French fries at the after party at Southern Whiskey Society.
So do you guys want to know a little fun fact about the after party?
Please tell.
Let's hear it.
So we all showed up at the after party. I was there with Whiskey Cause, who is Chris Constantino. He was the guy that was walking around saying, "Hey, do you guys want SAS 18?"
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So it was that
I remember.
guy. So we were up there, and the Greeze comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, I know you guys wanted to bring bottles up here, but I'm not entirely sure we can have bottles up here." And I said, "Okay, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." So I went up to the servers, and I said, "Hey, guys, can we have bottles up here?" And they were like, probably not. And I might have walked around and got a little bit of a collection going. And then I said, "Hey, if I give you
like
this,
church on Sunday.
If I give you
under
this,
the table work here, folks.
Can we have bottles up here?" And they looked at me and said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
That's the way it works right there, folks.
So I want to point out one thing before we move in too far. My good friend Dustin Whitaker
Hello.
is hanging out as well. Dustin, also known as the sample. Wait.
Sample
hold on.
God.
Sample
Rogue
God,
sampler.
Rogue sampler. There we go.
That's a very humble statement that he did right there.
He does a lot for everybody.
He really does.
I think that's another important thing that we want to talk about too, is so many of us are all across the country, but we know who everybody is. Travis is walking up right now. I don't know what
Sit down,
he's
buddy.
got, but I've known Travis for, 2 years at this point? Not that long? Wow. Really?
8 months, 2 years. What's the difference?
Could be 8 months, could be 8 million years.
Well, if you're drinking bourbon, I mean, that's...
It might
yeah.
feel like 2 years because I dragged that out of everyone. It's the worst experience ever knowing me.
That is not true. I've spent a short amount of time, relatively, knowing Travis, but I've enjoyed so much being able to talk with him and share pours with him and bottles and everything. And I think at the core of it, this weekend is all about us being able to come together.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah. But something was put down in front of me. I don't know what this is.
Well, why don't you take a little sippy sip and see what it is?
All
Gonna
right,
make him
fine.
guess?
Yes, I'm going to make them work it a little bit.
It smells so good. It's, see, I don't even want to say too much, but it's really sweet on the nose.
Okay. All right. Okay. Come on.
Also, Jason Newman is holding a microphone as well. I want to know what this pour is, first and foremost.
Well, it is me, so think about it. What? So you can think where
So
I'm
it's
at?
turkey.
Uh-huh.
You didn't just buy me a 17-year.
Sadly, I did not. Kentucky Spirit. Just
Oh,
just
yeah.
a little
Really?
spirit. Yes, sir.
Sweeter, for sure.
Yeah, I get that.
I figured we'd go with the little Kentucky Spirit.
I think that the palate overall is really pretty mellow for a Kentucky Spirit. Because I
agree.
always expect 101 at the very least to be fairly forward.
101 is
flavor
known
profile.
for being, for me, it seems to always pack a punch. Not in a bad way. It's just, it's rye forward. It's you know it's 101 when you drink it. You're like, bam, that's Turkey 101. That's got the rye. There's the hit. This bad boy, it's smooth like Jiffy.
Oh, wait. This isn't the one you bought today, is it?
Negative.
Okay.
But we do need to open that, but
That will happen. Sorry,
Later.
Nathan.
it's all right, Nathan. You got to do what you got to do, son.
So if we're not opening it, I want to know what it is.
Just
What did you get?
Straight old Kentucky Spirit
Ah.
off the bar.
Well, but it's got to
No,
be.
what did you buy today?
Okay. The Kentucky Spirit I bought was a Russell's Family Collection Kentucky Spirit. And then I also picked up some MB Rollin' Dark Fired Whiskey. Price points on the bottle was $70. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this because I really want to try this. I read the profile and it just sounded interesting. I've seen it online. I've been to the website. I've totally stalked them. So I get up to the cash register, beep, beep. She goes, 115. I went, kind of looked, what was that? So I looked on the screen, $50.
How does $50.99 add up to $100?
Well,
he had other things.
I had the Kentucky
Ah.
Spirit pick,
Yeah.
and that was
Okay.
Yeah, I was just right at
All
right.
right, I'm just math checking you real quick.
You're all right. I'm good. I'm not that far off yet. I'm not full grease.
We'll
yet.
get
I'm
there,
maybe half greasy. So.
Did you throw in a turkey call?
I thought about it, but that would be Travis.
It's way too far away. Yeah.
And to speak of the liquor barn trip, it might have been slightly the most epic trip. Perry might be.
It's
lucky
better
Perry's
for us
gonna be
to
allowed back in.
It's better for us to not talk about it so that I don't get incriminated in this
Okay.
investigation in the future.
Okay.
Plausible
No.
deniability.
It's I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Okay.
But what I do want to talk about is there is somebody here who is a regular listener of the show. Recently jumped on to the Patreon as well, but has been a long-term supporter of the PodCask. And he's sitting down with a mic in his hand like, what am I supposed to be doing with this?
talking to the mic like this, and you say 1,
It's-
2, 1, 2.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Just put him at your side, Ricky Bobby. Jason Newman.
Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm so happy that you're here. I have spent so much time, and I was talking about this earlier today as well. I spend so much time thinking about how thankful I am for people like you who dedicate not just their time to listening to this show, but also their money. And I'm promise you, I'm not trying to plug for the Patreon or anything, but this is so cool to sit down with somebody who believes in what I do enough to every month help me out in the way that you do.
Now he is very humble, so I will do the plugging for him. And one of the reasons I really, just in general, in my feeling, this is a service. This, I have long hours. I have a lot of time to think, and listening to these where I'm entertained and informed, especially. I want to support that. A, to keep the lights on, keep it going, and B, they work hard, and people that do this deserve the amount of support that they get.
Thank you.
So,
what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
as little as possible. No.
That's staying in.
I work
Your
security.
employers are hearing that.
I work security in a random jail in a random state, and I work 12-hour shifts. So, we have our checks, but there's a lot of, especially on night shifts where after lockdown, the hardest part of the job is
Sure.
staying awake and keeping going and letting the time pass. And I'm actually short selling it because I live quite a ways from work, so I'm driving a lot, and I'm a podcast fanatic. So,
Podcasts are a commitment. Excuse me. Commitment. Is what I said. Podcasts are a commitment. And it's a time out of your day that you spend not just listening to, but thinking about what it is that you just got done listening to. And not just am I happy about and so thankful for the fact that you take your time out of your day. I know it may be driving to work, but you could just as easily be listening to Mellencamp or whatever. It's Howard Stern.
self-help audiobooks.
But I am so thankful that I get to sit down with you and
Same here, man. I
not just go, hey, we should share a pour, but to put a name to a face. And I just first and foremost want to say thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
But
It's getting really warm and fuzzy. Where's Cletus?
no, it is. Yeah, Cletus probably should show up.
I think Cletus is still back in the ditch
Cletus-
somewhere,
Cletus is-
wearing flip-flops.
Cletus
and
is off
just,
mic tonight.
I think he's still in the ditch somewhere with his bottle of Woodford and just waiting for the hot dogs to come in.
Is Cletus a regular on the podcast?
No.
Oh, no. This is brand new,
No,
huh?
I just met Cletus for the first time this weekend.
Okay.
And Cletus, I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I just gotta say, who here? Do y'all know each other? Have y'all ever met? Has everyone here met? Because I gotta say, this is the most eclectic group that I've ever had the chance to meet.
Let's all raise our hands if we've met each other before. All right, so I'm seeing one hand up in the group, so they've met themselves.
So y'all just saw that
And
bus out front.
Jesus maybe, but I'm not entirely sure.
Y'all just saw that bus out front and decided to get on it and head over to Buffalo Trace.
Which bus?
The one going to Woodford Reserve. Haven't you heard about Woodford Reserve? We all went over there earlier. Woodford Reserve, y'all have to understand that it is the best whiskey on the market.
Why is it so good?
I don't really know why, but I mean, I've had Pappy's, I've had OKI's, I've had all the pride and pomp out of Kentucky, and I've never had a better whiskey than a Woodford. And if you really want to beg the question, you go into the liquor barn and they have the alarm tag around the neck of the bottles of Woodford. They don't have them around the bottles of Pappy. That got to tell you something.
What are you talking about?
Them Pappy Van Winkles.
No, hold on. No, wait. What liquor barn are you going into where you're seeing Pappy Van Winkle?
Not the one in Lexington.
Cletus, how far did you come to be a part of this weekend?
About 15 miles down the road, we went to liquor barn. It was 20 miles, I guess.
Wait,
to
what?
liquor barn down the road. I came from West Texas. It's a hop, skip, and a jump over the. Here we go.
I heard that Cletus is the only person that has bottles on layaway at Liquor Barn.
Well, at liquor, it depends on who you know, Tim.
What did you put
He
down
wanted-
on your bottles today? How much money did you put down on your bottles?
Well,
Hold on,
If
let
you
me-
must ask, I paid a 1% down payment on them bottles, which cost me 15 cents.
I mean, that Kentucky gentleman's just getting up there in price, I heard.
Woodford Reserve ain't free, you know.
I get it.
'Cause you know
15
why?
cents at a
It's
time, man.
bourbon business.
So he called me over to show me how secure those bottles of Woodford Reserve were. Cletus was talking so loud, y'all. He was talking so loud and so ornery that everybody in the bourbon aisle left.
About
When he
10 of 'em.
started yelling, there were people reaching for that
Hey,
bottle.
I had a religious experience in the middle of the bourbon aisle at a liquor barn in Lexington, Kentucky. And I had to shout it to the world to let everybody know that I am
I'm
in
never
bourbon
going to be allowed
heaven.
back there, by the
And
way.
it wasn't just, hey, I'm in. I mean, he yelled. He
And at that moment,
screamed
10
it.
people decided that they didn't need the bottles that they had in their hands. And
Or
they put
Jesus.
them down and walked off.
They need to go outside and find Jesus after that. They were questioning things.
Did they leave the bottles or did they just grab a bottle and
No,
run?
they left them.
There was a guy.
They were mid-reach. They wanted that bottle.
There was a guy that was literally
of
mid-reach.
Nope,
Woodford
not worth it.
so
Not
badly,
worth
it.
and they
Turned around.
recoiled so quickly. It was amazing.
I just have that effect on people. Is there something wrong with that? I mean, I'm excited about my hobby. It is my passion.
You don't get to see good things like
which
this.
we're looking across the table here at my friend Tim Gunderman, and he is all about the things that we're passionate about. And if that's not why we're here, I don't know why we're here.
Can we get Cletus some Woodford Reserve?
Y'all,
We could get some
I am
Woodford
about
Reserve.
to enter bourbon heaven for the second time today. If
Wait,
they-
how
if
many
they-
times have you had Woodford Reserve in your life?
I've never had it because it is so rare. You cannot find that in the normal stores.
When you put down 15 cents at a time, it takes a long time to
It
get a
takes me-
bottle of
It
that.
takes me a
There's a lot
while
of
to do
work
15
there.
cents.
Look, I just want you to know that this is your future.
My future is bourbon.
Your future is bright. It's
Is
reserved.
it so bright you have to wear shades?
No, it's not, Dustin.
Oh,
Shut up.
oh, okay.
No.
I'll just sit over here and look great.
I just want to know if he wants to drink it with or without a straw.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Hey, Jason, get that with a straw.
Is that Casey over there?
Why do I have
think
to have
we're
a straw
disgraced
just
with
because
the
I got
presence
bad
of
teeth?
Casey Allen
Because
Bright.
I look
No,
like
it's
Austin
because it
Powers on
tastes
crack?
better.
It tastes better.
It tastes better
Tastes
with
better.
a straw.
Wait,
At least that's what
wait,
she
hold on.
said.
It tastes better with a straw?
Yeah,
How did I
because-
not know this? I thought it was better on ice.
It comes
But
out on a
with a straw,
concentrated
it's even
portion of
better?
your tongue.
Look, if you don't brush your teeth for 3 weeks,
Hey. I brush my teeth
I'm just
twice
letting you
every
know.
3 weeks.
Look at this. All right.
It's legitimately Woodford
The biggest
Reserve
straw I've ever seen
with a straw.
in a rocks glass.
Well, a little dab will do you.
Ladies and
dab will
gentlemen.
do you, folks.
Woodford through a straw.
This is Woodford. This is the first time I've ever had this delectable
Now, is this
treat.
Stanford Wood?
No,
I
no,
just
this
wanna
is
make sure
Stanford.
standard
This
Woodford.
is the regular Woodford. That is one of the most rare bottles that I've ever looked upon. I'll tell you, it's a really beautiful bottle. It's nice and square. It's a flat front. You can, if you wanted to, you could take a marker and write on it and put something really cool on there. But it's square. It fits real nicely in a back pocket if you got the smaller bottles. The big bottles, though, you might have to put it down your pants and just pull your belt real tight.
So this is the first time you've ever had Woodford Reserve.
This is the first time I've had Woodford, and man, I've heard it's better than Pappy. So, gosh dang, I'm so excited about this.
All right,
y'all.
Cletus, I want you to do one thing for me.
What
I want
got?
you to take a big sip and give me every single tasting note you can find on that bad boy.
Isn't there like 200 of them?
I think so.
When he says sip, he
Anybody
says
doing this?
sip through a straw.
Gulp it.
And there he goes right now, using the straw. I swear to God, people.
Good Lord. That is heaven on earth right there.
I just want to let
Hold on,
everybody.
hold on, I got, had to take my teeth out for a second. Tasting note number
Take
one
the teeth out because it's getting
is
serious up
paint
in
thinner.
here.
Paint thinner is number one. Tasting note number two is chocolate mothballs. And tasting note number three, you said you wanted all of them. I've got vanilla wafers dipped in some kind of ranch dressing.
Is
I'm
that
not sure,
Hidden
maybe
Valley or
Italian.
is that like store brand?
No,
ranch
it's the
dressing?
store. It's the store ran alike. So
I-
it's really,
So is it like the?
It's
so
light
it's like
and
the
creamy.
Walmart stuff, right?
It's-
Like Sam's Choice.
yeah, it's not even dark. It's all light and creamy.
So okay.
Was
so
it
I'm
better
just
through
making
a
sure for
straw?
reference.
Did it taste better through a straw?
Let me get another taste. I never had it before. But I tell you, the straw makes the kick just. I feel like a mule kicked me in the chest. They talk about that the Kentucky hug. All
So
the
I
time.
don't think we have enough time for all of your tasting notes. What about the finish?
Let me get one more taste here.
Okay.
He's gonna go in back for another sip. people.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone drink bourbon from a straw.
So the finish.
I hate it.
The finish.
I hate it so much. It upsets me on so many levels.
I kind of want to
The
try it.
finish to me.
Tim's like, give me a straw
Well,
right
get
now.
get some of that Pappy Jr. right there.
Oh, there's two straws, a little straw and a big straw.
Pappy
It's
Jr.
happy 23 month.
The finish on it really, it comes in like a lion and leaves like a lamb. You think that you're gonna get a monster in the sheets, but you don't. You get this little cuddly lamb.
Wait,
like a
stop,
teddy bear?
stop.
We talking
no,
like koala?
no, Cletus.
What?
This is a family-friendly show.
Oh, so. Oh wait, I thought this was.
No.
Well-
we're not on Howard Stern.
So we're not having coitus relations with sheep. So it's not like the time.
Cletus, Cletus. It's going to be in your best interest if we clap you off right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Cletus.
Cletus, thank you.
Well,
Please,
hey,
folks.
it's not my fault. Y'all don't understand the farmers'
It's okay.
rating system.
It's all
But thank
right,
you
buddy.
for having me, Perry. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just going to say right now that I don't think I'm entirely opposed to drinking bourbon through a straw.
Is that the new thing?
legitimately tastes different.
It's actually a totally different
You know what?
way of tasting bourbon.
Some people really love beer through a straw, out of a can, and through a straw.
You-
I mean, they're
you-
also.
You haven't had Woodford until you had it through a straw.
Now there are times where I'll get a good old Miller High Life, and I'll use a crazy straw, just because that's how I roll.
But it's
I
Come
feel
on.
like you teased me there, Tim.
You can't tell me right now that it didn't taste a little better through a straw.
No one has lived until you have a Miller High Life out of a crazy straw. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean-
yeah. I would like to bring up right now, though, a friend of mine who is shaking his head, but I would really, really love to have
I
on.
think he's upset his kitty cats got beat tonight.
Oh,
I am totally throwing shade.
All right, the floor is
I don't
open for
acknowledge
Casey Bright.
Hoosiers. Do you remember that movie? No.
Did
No.
they have a movie
it's,
called Kentucky? Oh wait, they don't. That's called Deliverance.
You remember that NCAA tournament you didn't make this year, Indiana Hoosier? This,
All right, that's okay.
let's
We didn't have enough budget this year to pay
So,
for everybody, but that's
this
No, stop.
Billy Madison and all these movies that Adam Sandler did. One of the favorites of mine is the golf movie. Help me out here. What am I missing?
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore.
So there's this moment in Happy Gilmore, the golf movie, where all these guys in green jackets are sitting at the bar and they're like, "Hey, Happy, come with us. We're going to have a party. It's going to be on the 18th green at 9:30 p.m." Flash forward in the movie. He's sitting on the green. He's got a really nice coat on. He's sitting by himself.
P.S. It's 9:30 p.m. right now.
Sitting by
Are you
himself
serious?
is the key terminology here, and the sprinklers kick on. So that was me in the Herod room about 5 minutes ago.
Are you serious?
When I realized that Perry, who said he was coming to the Herod room to set up his podcast,
Look, no, hold on, time out.
left me
Time
alone
out.
Somebody
by
Time
myself.
out. Time out. I was told about 10 minutes before I was setting up that Nathan said it was okay for us to be in here.
No, I think that's fantastic, except for the part that nobody told me.
Casey, I got a consolation prize for you. You need to have Woodford Reserve through a straw.
Casey?
So here I stand with a glass of whiskey and a steady diet of government cheese in a room by myself.
Casey, seriously. You
And
need,
I don't even know what to say right now.
You need
used
to have
I
Woodford
used to
Reserve
take
through a
this
straw.
podcast seriously, and I've given up by now.
What am
We're
I,
episode 70.
Perry? I love
It's
you.
officially off
I
the
love you.
rails.
I love
Woodford
you.
Reserve
I love
through
you
a
too,
straw.
What am I
buddy.
doing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Right through black cocktail straw.
Okay.
Hey, Casey, I didn't know if you knew. We moved it to the Owl's Nest. I didn't know if you missed
What is it? What is it?
We moved to the Owl's Nest. I didn't know if you knew that. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Dustin,
Doesn't Woodford Reserve taste so much better through a straw?
it does. It does.
I've heard it's interesting.
Yeah, I heard a half hesitant
I actually,
sentence there.
as soon as I drank that, even with him saying that before, and that's pretty typical Woodford. I actually like Woodford, though. If I'm in a hotel and there's Knob Creek, no, I mean seriously, if you're traveling in your hotel and there's Knob Creek, Maker's Mark, and Woodford, which one do you grab? Okay, it's Woodford. Right. So it's not that it's
Debatable.
Perry. Nope.
Wait, what was the first option? Yeah, Knob Creek for me.
Small batch?
Yeah,
I'm going to pick Makers.
really?
Yes.
All right, so let's. Why?
I'm going to pick Makers because from a flavor profile, I'm going to get a little bit of that sweetness, a little bit of that cinnamon on the back, and it's just nice. Woodford, well, I might change it now because I can drink it through a straw, but
Total game changer, folks.
Here's my point with Knob Creek. The proof is there, and the balance of the flavor is there. I think that Knob Creek Small Batch is one of the most approachable mid-tier whiskeys out there. I think that Woodford and Maker's Mark are fine.
sure.
I think they are aggressively fine. But I think that Knob Creek is enough to push ahead of both of those whiskeys, both of those bourbons, to where I would go, yes, please.
I'm still going to stick by my Maker's Mark.
I think that's fine.
And
I'm not going to be mad at you.
And this
for
is
it.
coming from a guy, I'm not a huge Weeder fan. But
Yeah.
of the three, I think from like what packs the most punch, I think Makers delivers
So
more
even-
than all of them.
Even though you're not a Weeder fan, do you have a Weeder that you typically gravitate towards?
So I would say Weller 107 for sure would be what I gravitate towards.
As most of us do.
Yep, absolutely. And then, like William LaRue Weller.
So that's the thing, and that's tough because when you're talking about weeders generically, there's not a lot out there.
Right.
No.
And if you really were to sit down and name them in the experience, you gravitate towards Buffalo Trace. But the one thing Buffalo Trace does that Makers doesn't is that they give it a couple more years. So if Makers were to come out tomorrow and say, let's do a Makers 10-year, I would bounce on that so hard. I mean,
Yeah.
because weeders are expensive to make. And if you're going to do it right, they need a little more time.
So
So everybody else came along and figured that out, but Makers is still like, no offense, but they're living in the Stone Age. They haven't caught up and done all these new style releases that everybody else has.
I think they're living in the bourbon and Coke age. They know what's up.
well, I think
Yeah,
that's
they
fair.
do know what's up.
No, but they understand that they are a very specific market.
Totally.
But even if they came out with that at 10 years old, but it was still 90 proof, would you still buy it?
I think that Makers has already stepped into the cask strength market. So for them to do a 10-year, they could make it a different proof if they wanted to. If it were 90 proof, to be fair, yeah, I would buy it. I would. I would be like, if they came out with it, I would be so interested into what that tasted like, and I would actually sit down and compare that to other weeders that are out there.
Right.
But they are so reluctant to do so because they don't have to. They can fill up bottles with water and put a horse on the front, and people are going to buy it. It's what
So
it is.
I
but-
see your point there. I think, though, if they released a Maker's 10, that the market wouldn't know how to respond. I think they would be like, is it an age statement? Is this regular Makers that's now 10 years old? Is everything else going away? I don't think they would recognize what they're actually putting out, and they'd put the value in what we would put the value in from an age statement standpoint.
It's a generic market for sure, yeah, but absolutely.
Travis Gins, by the way, wants to throw in an opinion here.
Okay, so when you look at Michter, or not Michter, excuse me, if you look at Maker's Mark is the quintessential beginner's bourbon.
Heck yeah.
Until you get into the cask strength, which is still kind of a beginner's cask strength. Makers knows their market. You know, they know what it is. And the people that regularly drink Makers would lose their minds moving into a 10-year product. What is the age right now on current Makers product?
About
Just your standard.
7.
It's
Yeah.
so,
7-inch.
but it's not age stated.
Average, yeah.
So you put an age statement on something that has never had that, and move it into a premier whiskey status of something that has a 10-year age stated. I think people would absolutely lose their minds. Even the people that started out 15 years ago drinking Makers because that's what was fancy in college. I think if they did that, they could take a large share of the market for about 6 months, and then it would calm down.
So the question is,
Why
to
aren't
you,
they doing
and,
it?
And yeah, besides the obvious, why aren't they doing it? And it's the same thing. There's so many good bourbons out there, but truthfully, what it comes down to is who has the best marketing. Heaven Hill has fantastic bourbon, but their marketing is a little bit lackluster in comparison to some other people. And the Maker's Mark, when you're looking at them, they could do that 10-year, but instead somebody sat around and said, let's go pick a bunch of different types of wood.
Well,
And
see,
let
here's
people
here's the
pick the
thing about
states.
Maker's Mark is they have held to the line that this is how we made it 50 years ago.
Cocoa
This
staves,
is
though?
how we're going to make it from now on, their standard product.
Yeah.
And then somebody lost their mind and decided that the private select barrels need to have
Right.
wood chips thrown in it. I don't know who decided to do that. I will be honest, I'm not a fan of the Maker's Private Select. I don't talk bad on them. I love their products, but me personally, that's not my wheelhouse for a private pick. You know, if I'm going to get a pick, I want a single barrel of something that's unadulterated.
Agreed.
I don't know who decided to take wood chips or barrel staves and push them into the barrel and then continue aging them to change the flavor profile based
Right.
on
That's the
1
issue.
out of 10 staves. I mean, it screams gimmick to me, and they've done very well doing it. Don't get me wrong, they know their business, but for my money, I'm not buying it.
So at that point, we have to argue, is finishing a gimmick?
I don't think it is. I'm going to disagree with
I-
everything you said, actually.
Well, I think finishing is, by virtue of what it is, a gimmick. It is something that is different from your standard profile to attract a certain buyer to a product.
Sure.
But there is a difference between taking wild turkey product and then short aging it in a sherry cask to make revival that brings a completely different profile out than aging with 1 out of 5 different options of barrel staves.
You're mischaracterizing revival, though.
Well, a little
So
bit, yes.
here's what I think of when I think of this, and I'll throw it back to him. So on top of bourbon, I'm a big car guy. So when I think about this, the analogy for me is I grew up in love, absolutely in love with the American-style Ford Mustang. And you've got a Mustang. And then you look at the variants. You've got a Saline. You've got a GT 5.0. You go in and you've got all these variations, but when you look at it, you still know it's a Mustang. You know it is. It's just souped up. And my problem with the, not gimmicky necessarily, but the filtration system of the different flavors is if it gets so off base that you lose the profile and it loses its identity, do you really still see it as an actual maker's mark, or is it still that Mustang that you loved? And if you lose that, in my opinion, that's where you've crossed a border that I don't think is acceptable as bourbon.
So I follow what you're saying. What I'm gonna say is that if you take your same analogy and you put like Saline on a Mustang or Roush or whatever it is, you're getting a style of Mustang. You are getting a branding of Mustang. Yes, it's still a Mustang underneath, but people are paying extra money, a premium, to get the style and characteristic of that Saline or that Roush. And so if you compare that to makers and how they're putting their staves and the different characteristics in there, it's different styles, right? And you're the one that gets to explore that. Just like if you were to buy a regular stock Mustang and you decide that I want a spoiler on the back and I want a front fairing on the front and that's it, right? That's a combination of you putting your own style on that. And Makers is just doing that for you.
While I get that, I think Makers has become the Fast and the Furious of bourbon, to your analogy that I've used, because there are unrecognizable Honda Civics out there driving around that really, really are trying their best to be a Supra.
By
and
the
they
way,
just can't do it.
Did we lose everybody already?
no, I'm just saying, who's trying to alter their Honda Civic?
You know what?
Everyone
Maker's Mark
tries to
is.
alter their Honda Civic because without the spoiler, without the fuzzy dice, it's just a Honda Civic.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Anyway, go ahead, Casey. I'm
So,
sorry.
no, you're fine. It may be poor analogies. I just think if Makers were to sit back and say, take the stave game out of it, let's just do a 10, a 12, let's do a 20-year Makers. Who in here would not buy a 20-year Makers?
I
Raise your hand.
absolutely
I
would
totally
buy
agree.
a
Not
10,
by
a
chance.
15,
if you
a
saw
20
tomorrow
Makers.
a 20-year.
I'm by virtue not a Weeder fan. I'm not a huge Weeder fan. I'm not a fan of most of the E.H. Taylor line. I like them, but that's not my wheelhouse. Makers, I love Makers. It is typically my go-to because it's all that's available at certain events, and I like it, but only so far. But I love your analogy of the Mustang and customization to represent the customization of a bourbon. But I, as a person who is not a huge Weeder fan, would pay extra money for an age-stated 10-year Makers.
I think
A 15-year Makers, I would pay more money than the 10-year.
Yeah.
I would buy into that if they would age their product longer.
Right.
So-
And
so
Makers
would I.
Makers is still the only distillery that rotates their stock.
So Makers
Nobody
Mark, if you're
rotates it.
listening, we're begging you. We're absolutely begging you.
Well, I think that's the thing too. We have to establish this. I do not hate Makers.
No,
Not
I
by
like
any
it.
No, no,
stretch.
no.
I like
I
it.
think that they are very good at what they
I'm
do.
just curious.
But I want to, Denny Potter just moved there from Heaven
Yeah.
Hill. I think that he is bringing so much talent to that distillery, so much talent to that game, that if he doesn't change up what they're releasing, it will be a waste.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they have the potential for a longer aging and be a little bit more selective with their barrels. They rotate their stock in the warehouses to maintain an absolute zero on taste profile.
And they tell you that.
They want, yes, they're very adamant at making sure people know they have a flavor profile that they're going across the board. That's what we want. And I think that they're living in the past. They could advance their product into the future with the younger generations and get something that's more eclectic per batch. So if you look at a single barrel, or if you look at even a very small batch, you could change your flavor profile just a little bit and people would go wild for it.
You're right.
Just to get something different, because as a weeder, it's a good weeder. But if you always do the same thing, you'll never advance.
So here's what I think with Maker's Mark. I think they're a victim of their own legacy. Right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
they have always been Maker's Mark. They have always delivered a consistent product.
Nail meat head.
And so then when you're asking them to do something out of the box, right, they're already doing that, right? They could come back and say, I'm already doing that. I'm doing different barrel staves. I have all these variations of Makers. I'm releasing cask strength. I've done Makers 46, right? And they have, but their baseline market, their tried and true, what everyone goes to, that's their bread and butter. So if they deviate too far from that, how do they have room to experiment? How do they have room to release other aged products where people are going to be able to really recognize the difference, unless it's so polarizing, dramatic? I mean, how?
I see both sides of this.
Makers has Makers has standard products. You have your standard Makers, you have your Makers 46, and you have your cask strength, right? That's really it.
Yeah.
But Makers has 500 different products.
Okay.
Did y'all know this? That Makers has 500 or so different products. You know why? Because people go crazy for
State
the
program?
nope. Makers has 500 different products because people go wild for the different color wax on them. You look at the
Hold on.
you look at the
Hold on.
Justified bottle.
No, wait, hold on. No. We're talking about two different things.
No,
You're
no,
talking
no.
about packaging.
Yes.
Listen to what I'm saying on
We're
this.
talking about the juice that's in the bottle.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let you finish.
Listen to
I'm
what
gonna
I'm saying.
let you finish, but
What I'm saying. The average Joe that walks into a liquor store has zero clue that the juice inside of a Justified bottle is exactly the same as a standard $15 bottle of Makers. But because they have the genius of marketing, they can market it as, this is a different bottle. You need to have this bottle. You need to have this bottle. So they put their energy into marketing a different bottle and a special release bottle. It's the same juice, same whiskey.
so it almost sounds like you're
Where-
talking about Buffalo Trace.
So yeah, we can make this argument with a lot of other distilleries.
I mean,
yeah,
and,
you're
and
exactly
I'm
right.
agreeing with your analogy,
And
but
to-
if you think of BT1 and how many different bottles it goes into,
and to
you're not
segue
wrong.
into other.
So it's there. I like the analogy, but to his point, you
Yep.
can't just sit there and call it Maker's Mark. And I'm
Yep.
almost disagreeing with myself when I say this, but you might have to have a different product name for it instead of just saying
Yes.
Maker's Mark 10. You might need to be
Sure.
something completely different.
Your branding's too strong in the Makers for you to be able to do that.
Well, I think that's why they were trying to expand.
I still love you.
I actually take you way more seriously when you have more than two teeth. So this is great.
Who are you talking about?
No, you know what's cool though is I actually had a lot of time to think about this by myself in the room on the other side of the hotel, so it was great.
Before you came in to the podcast.
Yeah, and just
I'm
to
sorry.
shift the focus a little bit. Thank you all for having me on the show. I'm sure there are other
Of
people
course.
that want to talk on.
Oh,
this,
we're going to get
but-
everybody else on
Yeah.
at some point.
But I just wanted to say this before I hopped off. I've been listening to your show for a long time now, believe
Thank
it or
you.
not. And it's I appreciate what you do, and you have a lot of soul in your show, and I mean that sincerely because you come out and you care, and it's exemplified and it's very pure that you care about what you're talking
Thank you,
about. So
Casey.
I just want to say thank you for that, and I'm going to pass the mic to somebody else. So I'm tired of talking. I'm going to drink a little bit. Yeah.
Get on the mic.
Before you go, because we got onto this, which was kind of the segue of the many different products. Looking at the Buffalo Trace, the different mash bills, and how many different products on each mash bill there are, we had the opportunity to try different variations this weekend of Buffalo Trace mash bills. So out of what we were able to taste and the knowledge that you have, like what is your favorite mash bill?
BT1.
So BT1. So for those that don't know, is what? What products are
And
BT1?
done.
Yeah, so it's simple for me because
All of them.
I can go out and I can go into a store, and if they've got a store select Buffalo Trace, it's money. So I can do a Buffalo Trace pick, but also one of my favorite bourbons of all time is George T. Stagg. And to be able to actually extrapolate that out and say that I'm drinking the same recipe, just a larger age variation or anything between, age stated Eagle Rare back in the day when it actually had a 10-year on it, I just like the recipe. And I would prefer that personally over the Weeder recipe any day of the week. Good question.
I think that's fair.
I can get
Yeah.
behind that.
One of the coolest things for me, by the way, as we move on into the rest of the episode, is the fact that this isn't just a weekend for people who love whiskey, but the fact that those who love whiskey can bring their significant others along. And apparently some of them have palates that are so good that it's going to wind up on a bottle.
I'm super jealous of that, by the way.
I'm not going to talk too much about that because I don't think I'm allowed to. But I think it's important to talk about the extension of the community to a degree, even though you all are so entrenched in it. And I'm not trying to. I don't want to isolate you all in terms of this conversation because you're a whiskey drinker, Jen. Nat, you have a fantastic palate. But I think that it's really important to talk about the people who support us in the whiskey drinking community. And for so many of us, that's our significant other. And I think that Jen and Nat are really specific and important aspects of that. So, first off, I want to say thank you guys for sitting down with me. Second off, I wish that you guys could come to Louisville next month for the Women of Bourbon podcast.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
Please come. I would be happy to have you all. But I want to ask both of you individually, what is it not just about this community, but the fact that this is basically alcohol? Why does this separate your expectations or your understanding of what this community is from, say, beer or vodka or wine? Or gin, sure. And I like gin. I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist, and I'm really
Let's talk
interested
later.
in experiencing things and to have soulful experiences. And
This is Nat, by the way. I just want to point that out.
expanding, Natalie Herndon, and expanding your depth and breadth of experience, and making relationships and making connections. And it's not just about the connections with people, but with place, and history and mythology, and like it's just it has its own it has its own culture, and it's accessible because anybody can go to a bar and try whiskey, or bourbon, and and it helps you kind of identify what you love about whiskey and bourbon, but also about yourself, and you get to share and identify different characteristics about yourself and about what you like. So anyway, and I like to I like to drink.
And you
Don't
do
we
it,
all?
You do it very well, though.
Thank
Nat.
you.
You do.
There's something really different about the bourbon community. Number one, there aren't a lot of us women that really get into bourbon. And
I hear ya.
So people
Amen.
ask me all the time. My husband and I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and there are a couple of bourbon societies there, and we're not a part of those because it's mostly men and people who they get into the ridiculous descriptions of what's what, and I am so not as articulate as Natalie when it comes to identifying what I like, but I can't pick out those crazy tasting notes like you can. But no one looks down on me for that. Everyone here respects me and respects my opinions and what I like and don't like just as much as they do Natalie. So we really are much more of a community.
Travis Gins, by the way.
So, for you and for Nat here shortly, what is it that got you into bourbon? Was it your husband, or was it that you got into it and then got him? My wife is slowly dipping her toe into the world of bourbon. She prefers certain things and knows what she likes. Did you come into it with an open mind of, okay, I might like this, I might not, but that's not the only thing that there is. I can try different things and find what I like. Or was it just, hey, I'm here. I'm going to participate because my husband's
BTW.
here.
No, actually. So I was a wine drinker and a vodka drinker. And we actually got invited to one of our friends' house who is very much into bourbon. And he invited us to a blind tasting. And I was the only woman willing to sit in and do the tasting of all the bourbons. And I actually found my gateway bourbon that night was Angel's Envy. And I really love that finish that's on that. And so we pretty much got started that same night. And that was 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Well, you're spoiled now after
Yeah.
this
Wait,
weekend.
no kidding. Yeah.
yeah, so we have been bourbon hunting. We drove down to Florida, and I think in the last 6 months we've probably picked up 120 bottles of bourbon.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
We don't do anything halfway.
My
Yes,
my
hi. I would like
father-in-law-
to start a bourbon collection in 6 months.
My father-in-law says if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
That's right.
So
That's awesome.
So, and I will say that other than tasting some experimental things at a couple of distilleries,
right.
I've not gone back to wine or vodka since. It's all bourbon, 100%.
Look, vodka
rye.
sucks.
And rye.
So
I love
All right,
vodka.
Natalie.
Yes. So
Come on.
I'm sorry.
Previously, I liked Dalwhinnie and Redbreast and Irish, Irish whiskeys. But I love, just like I said, experiencing new things. And we probably have almost every liqueur that you can find in a liquor store at our house because we just buy unique, different things, and we tend to be collectors. And so we had previously been into wine and cheese pairing and things like that, and have found what we loved in wine, found what we loved in cheese, and then kind of moved to whiskey and bourbon. And it can be a really affordable hobby. You can get really good stuff that's not that expensive, and also it's a sharing kind of thing. Jason Newman, my husband, he loves bringing people over, and he says he's curating a tasting collection, because he loves to bring people over and just give them a tour of all the whiskeys.
I love that.
So obviously, though, your palate wasn't made overnight, and I say that because Dixon freaking Deadman looked at you and said, "You're exactly right."
Oh my
And
God.
we were tasting the whiskey, and I'm not gonna name it. It doesn't matter. But Dixon was so amazed and surprised. But what was it that helped you shape your palate? Was it cooking? Was it drinking? was it just
Eating, pretty much. And also I previously had been a master gardener, and I love flowers and
No
things
kidding.
like that, and so I know a lot about that. And then I'm a foodie, and and then the wine and the cheese tastings
Right.
and things, all that help.
Now, you started out as
Yeah.
Well, just so
Now,
everybody
now
knows.
you started out drinking wine that is if I remember, Newman said earlier, like that's where you kind of developed your palate, and then you have recently forayed into bourbon and whiskey.
Right. Yeah. The first time I ever saw a tasting note was on a Syrah, and it was blackberry and dark chocolate. I'm like, oh, I want some of that. But so I kind of think in that way whenever I'm drinking, because that was kind of my first experience.
So when we were tasting earlier, just so everybody knows, one of the things that you pulled out from what we were drinking was plum. You said plum. And I love to be prompted. And so when you said plum, I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe anything as having plum.
And that was on that stag, right? Yeah. So what's funny about that is I get plum consistently on stag.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm upset that I didn't pick that up when we were doing that tasting. But sure enough, though, it was blind, so I wasn't going to.
Yeah, none of us knew what we were drinking.
I think that I associate that maybe not so much with the drink itself, but with that brand.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. But the fact that blind, and that went,
That was amazing.
it's plum, it's dark chocolate, it's all these awesome things.
So with us, we had obviously Dixon Dedman was leading that tasting, but down at the other end of the table where I was at, we had Dan the Bearded Dram, who, if anybody knows, has the most absolute amazing palate out of most people any of us know. And I heard him go, "Wow, that is amazingly specific." And she sounds like she has a good palate. This was 3 or 4 comments that I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
But he said the first word out of his mouth was "wow." And he basically, I can't believe that she picked those notes. Like, that's hyper specific for somebody that you would not expect if you looked at her to be a bourbon tasting
so sweet
guru.
and innocent.
And she is so sweet and so amazing. And Dan who picks barrels several times a week, on many occasions, it's several barrels a week, was thoroughly impressed with this sweet little lady who came to Utah via Mississippi. And I think that is the highlight of his weekend, was watching you do your work, because he came back later when you were doing tasting notes for an unnamed bourbon and an unnamed rye, that those notes are probably going to be used in a product release.
You can probably figure that out yourself if you.
No, it's not something that was Dixon Dedman products.
So,
I don't know.
So could
But
I?
I watched and took pictures of them just silently comparing notes between Natalie and Dixon, and it was one of the weirdest experiences to have from afar, because I wasn't involved in it. I just got to witness them quietly taking sips and writing down their notes.
No, I agree. So the only thing I was going to add to it is it really speaks to the bourbon community. If you think about it, you had multiple levels of experience at that tasting table. She calls out plum. Every single person, regardless of how much they've tasted or not, turns their head on a swivel and says, "I absolutely agree with that." And everyone learned something at that moment. I learned that I need to be a little bit more specific with my vocabulary. I also need to expand my vocabulary, because I get stuck in the same old caramel, vanilla, dark chocolate,
Absolutely.
almond.
Yep.
She says plum, and I'm like, why am I not thinking about plum?
And I hear plum, and my immediate thought is dark fruit.
Sure.
I'm not
Yeah,
placing it in
absolutely.
that way.
Yeah.
But what I think is so cool, and I'm trying to tie it back into my original question in some perspective, but understanding that whiskey is no longer a men's game. It's no longer about the boys.
No way.
And no, and Jen and Nat, you all are very specific instances of that.
Yes.
And I'm happy that we were able to connect with you all this week. And B, thank you for what you all are doing in this community. Because even though you might not realize it, you are doing the Whiskey Lord's work.
We are whiskey
The reality
angels.
is the ladies really are the future of this industry.
I agree.
Because men have had the game for so long, and I am by no means advocating for any point of view. No, women bring so much to the table that people have taken for granted for years because nobody believed that women have the wherewithal to survive in the bourbon community. The reality is women's tasting palates far exceed a man's, just based on physiology. And it is amazing to watch these ladies come into the hobby and the craft and start making a difference where people start turning heads and realizing, oh crap, our number's up.
So I think about it.
So with that,
No, he's going to sit down with us.
Liz Henry has graced us with her presence this weekend.
Yes.
And we would love for her to come and speak to
Please.
women becoming masters.
I have
in this
totally
craft.
lost control over my own
Yes,
podcast, by the way. No, it's okay.
It's the Cletus podcast now.
I think about this completely differently. I don't see gender on whiskey at all.
Amen, brother.
The way that I look at it is it's about who you're willing to share it with.
Well, and
Well, you were correct, but for too long, people have had that opinion that men are where it's at because bourbon and whiskey has always been an old boys club.
That's where I disagree
hate
with
that.
you.
Liz,
Yeah.
Liz is fuming over here.
Yeah, you should be
It is-
fuming.
it is
you should
no
be
longer a
absolutely
man's
fuming
world.
at that
I
statement.
am.
It is no
But it
longer a
is.
man's world in the bourbon world because, like I said earlier, women's palates physically, like the physiology of a woman's body, their palate far outstrips a man's. They can taste things that none of us could ever dream of.
So, but before we move on to Liz, who is wonderful, and I'm so happy she's sitting down with us, I have to say thank you so much to Nat and Jen for
Yes,
sitting down
thank
with
you.
us because you all are fantastic, and I am so absolutely.
So this is interesting because I tread with caution when it comes to talking about any gender specific when it comes to drinking anything, right? So
Yeah.
women, men, if you bring in bourbon, whiskey, scotch, whatever, I don't really believe that it has anything to do with gender. I think it has everything to do with what people want it to be.
Sure.
And so they bring their own biases into that. So
Yeah.
if I were to ask you, like, what's a woman's drink? How would you answer that?
Okay, so I'm Liz. I'm going to throw it to you in a second. Cut
No.
this out, Perry.
So here's the deal. That's
so-
a loaded question.
so-
there is no right
For-
answer to that.
For a man, to ask a man what is a woman's drink, I will tell you what my wife chose to drink the other night, just on a Wednesday night. My wife cracked open a bottle of Wild Turkey Decades Batch 2. She had Michter's 10-year from
Okay.
2018, and she had a small taste of 2017 GTS. It doesn't matter if she's a male or a female. It's bourbon, and it's good, and she's going to drink what she likes.
Sure.
See,
Absolutely.
I'm.
Can you chime in on this, please?
Can,
Liz,
wait,
no,
wait, hold
there
on.
is no such thing.
Hold on 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're
because
in.
I want to finish kind of what Travis is saying,
Okay.
but my wife is not a whiskey drinker by any stretch. We're getting there. We're getting there. But if she has Wild Turkey 101 in a Norland glass, it's her jam. It's her absolute jam. Every now and then, though, she has a bourbon in just a regular rocks glass that she loves. But on a regular basis, she's a wine drinker. She's a gin drinker. So for me, a woman's drink is indeterminable.
Okay.
It's indescribable. And that's because I am of that same mindset of I will have whatever tastes good. If you give me the best gin and tonic in the world, I'm going to drink the crap out of it. It doesn't have to be whiskey.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But
Chime in. You chime in.
Liz
Liz
Henry.
is
Liz Henry,
looking
what
at
are
me
your
like,
thoughts?
like don't.
I think they're digging themselves into a hole.
Over the edge.
Yes.
This is Liz's
Okay,
wheelhouse.
all right. I'm gonna
right
shut
now.
up so Liz can talk.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I have too many things to say.
And I'm gonna
to what you
stop
just
talking
said 5
because
minutes
you
ago.
deserve to have
The
the floor.
first thing I'm going to say is we always tell people to treat bourbon like a good red wine. So if you are
Amen.
a wine drinker, if you're a vodka drinker, it's because you aren't there yet. It's because you haven't had enough good bourbons in the right environment to feel good about it, to feel comfortable about it, to taste the tastes. Once you taste the tastes, I was a vodka girl. It's why I'm married today, because of vodka. And vodka is odorless, colorless, flavorless. It's nothing. But to talk about women's drinks, to talk about what women like, number one, the most rapidly growing segment of bourbon drinkers is women. Right now,
In
women.
what age group?
Amen.
It's not
It doesn't
just
matter.
youngsters. It's
Doesn't
women
matter.
who have
It
mature
doesn't
tastes,
matter.
who have already done vodka, who have already done wine, who have already done all the other things, and now they not only like it, they deserve it. They want to drink it. They enjoy it.
Amen.
The very first event that I was invited to when we launched our bourbon, it was Madison Cocktail Week, which is our big city. And I got asked by our distributor to speak at gender equity in the spirits industry. Yeah, but I said, like, seriously? That's what you're going to call it? You know, gender equity in the spirits industry. And I
That's
thought,
subsection
That sounds.
C of
That sounds very
Article 3.
1960s.
it sounded so dry. Like, I was like, okay. I was so lucky because the woman who was a moderator was a bar manager. The other woman on the panel was the woman who was the distiller at George Dickel at the time, and the woman who was owner of a bar and restaurant that had all the stars in Milwaukee. Fabulous woman who developed bar menus and cocktails and knew everything about every drink you ever wanted to have. We sat up there, and the room was full, and it was full of men and women. And everybody in the room was interested in what's going on in the bar industry. Why are women feeling like they aren't equal in my bar where I'm working? And I need women in my bar because I need as many of them as I need men, the whole situation. So we decided that there was a need here that was unmet. So we started a group, and yeah, we don't discriminate against men, but it's called Spirited Women. And this group meets in the Madison area. Sometimes we go to the Milwaukee area. We've raised over almost $10,000 for the Rape Crisis Center. We help all the bars train everybody in safe serve training so that they know what they're doing. They know when something's not really like it should be, when somebody's being aggressive. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You can violate the rules of good drinking. But when it comes to taste, I think everybody just needs to know that the biggest advantage of bourbon is, I think you said it, who you're going to share it with, how you're going to enjoy it. When Dixon said, I just think it's all about celebrating, our tagline is reward yourself. And sometimes you reward yourself because you made it to Friday.
And remind us,
Or
our
5 p.m.
tagline is who? Remind us what you represent, what company you represent.
J. Henry and Sons Wisconsin Straight Bourbon. And we've been making bourbon a decade this year. We have wild turkeys on our farm, but we shoot them.
So can I share a story about today? So I went
Please.
to Castle and Key today, and it's absolutely beautiful.
It is.
Marianne Barnes is doing a phenomenal job with what she's doing. And
She
so
is a rock star.
one of the things that I noticed there, and I had a conversation with someone that was there as well, that was one of the tour guides, is that they were so excited to talk to me about how she's introducing more females and women into
Absolutely.
whiskey and the workplace and who she's bringing in. And when I looked around and I saw a majority of female staff versus men's staff at Castle and Key, I was overjoyed by that.
I walk into Castle and Key, and I go, "This is home. This is how things are supposed to be. This is the community that is being built right now.
This is our
in
future.
Bourbon. And this is our future."
My thought on it is, without change there is no innovation.
Absolutely.
And we need more women in the industry because it brings a fresh point of view, because they've sadly not been allowed for many years to break into positions that are traditionally held by men. Master distillers is a position that is primarily held by men until 2 years ago, when the first master distiller who was a female was announced, who has done amazing things.
Fairly recent, but women are the people who started the whole distilling and whiskeys and spirits industry.
But wait, are you talking history about things that people don't ever realize, that women have been a primary factor in the bourbon industry since the 1910s and before that? I mean,
And before that.
are you really going to actually tell
gonna
us
go
history?
And if you want to hear more about that, you can come to the Silver Dollar on April 6th in Louisville for the Women of Bourbon.
This is what's
live
crazy is
podcast.
since the 1800s, women have been involved in the whiskey industry, but because they were forced to take a backseat to men who took all the credit, they weren't given their proper due. And it is only recently, through discovering old documents and things, that we find out how big of a role women really had. And
Since 2000 AD, when they were the ones who fermented fruits and gathered that stuff and put it into a goat gut, that was, the beginning of spirits. I don't understand why anybody would look at a pile of rotted fruit that had flies on it and was fermented and bubbly and say,
hey, that looks really tasty.
let's try that, and then say, let's try that again,
Let's
because
do
that
it again.
shit's good.
So,
Tim,
I'm sorry. So I want to kind of bring this all home. And so to me, it doesn't matter what you're drinking. When it comes to what you drink, it's about the invitation to drink.
Absolutely.
If you're inviting someone to drink with you, it doesn't matter what you're drinking. It doesn't matter who they are, what gender they are, what religion they are. Doesn't matter any of that. Nothing matters. The invitation of that is what matters, right? So if you're not inviting everyone to drink with you, then you're not doing it right.
I absolutely agree.
It's all about the sharing.
Absolutely.
That's where bourbon is the most beneficial thing,
Yep.
because it takes longer. It slows you
Sure.
down. It makes you stop and think.
Whiskey is meant to be shared.
Yeah.
Is a phrase that is said at every single one of our tastings with my local group out in West Texas. And it's
say that
always
daily.
it's always the same people, but it's funny that we always say, "Hey, this bottle is like a serious bottle. Are you sure you want to open this and share it with us?" And every time someone says, "It's meant to be shared." And it doesn't matter if it's me, if it's my wife, because at the end of the day, it's the friendships and the bonds that you make over the bourbon that really matter. You could be pouring out a $10 bottle or a $200 bottle. If you don't have someone that's with you that is worth sharing that bottle with, what's the point of drinking it?
I would agree with
Just like Tim said,
I would agree
it's
too.
all about who you invite to the party to share it with.
But I also think it's really exciting that some of you who didn't get your spouses to come this year
Oh,
have
Lucy
them-
will be here next
have
year.
them talking about it, because it ends up being a lot more fun for all of us. And those of us who are with spouses, great. Those of us who are not, that's okay too. I'm here with a friend who I really enjoy drinking bourbon with. She's a blast. I've been down to Kentucky many times for bourbon women's events, and none of those events are meant to exclude men, but they were kind of developed to create a safe space for women to feel like, hey, yeah, we can sit at the table and order a flight
But
and
that
feel
shouldn't-
really good about it too. And we
that
get
shouldn't be the case, though.
it shouldn't.
It shouldn't be a.
But as long as it
I'm a
exists.
part of a small community.
Mhm.
Women should be part of the larger community, which is bourbon and whiskey.
The challenge is the women who started this organization are the queens. Like we come into a distillery
I love
tour
it.
and we feel
I
like we
love
are
it.
royalty because when Peggy No Stevens, who started the
is
Bourbon Women's
amazing.
Group, badass woman.
Amen.
When she walks into the door and says, "We're going to do a tour at this distillery or this new restaurant," people literally go, "Oh my gosh, Peggy's coming." And they roll out the red carpet and they welcome all of us, and we get an experience non-paralleled. And it's not meant to exclude, it's an opportunity to see the things
It's
that
awesome.
we might not have
Absolutely.
seen before.
It's the
So-
relationship, and that's I look at that as non-gender. I look at that as through relationship.
Right.
This took such a weird turn that I
did.
didn't anticipate
So-
it
It
to.
absolutely did.
But I want to say that this community is what I want whiskey to be. And I think that everybody should strive to expect this and enjoy this from a bourbon drinkers group, from a whiskey drinkers
Yeah.
group. And this is the model.
You all set the tone. The beautiful thing about this community, this group in particular, is that no
It will
one
be duplicated.
doesn't feel welcome.
Exactly.
Totally.
Everyone walks in the door.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what your level
Yeah.
of expertise or your experience is. You walk in the door and you feel like, hey, we're all here. We're all having a good time. What do you think about this?
Exactly.
Totally.
What is your favorite? It's a beautiful thing.
And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, my favorite is that Woodford Reserve.
Oh god.
How did Cletus get the microphone?
Nikki.
So can I tell you guys a secret about this weekend? So I brought my wife with me, and the only reason I brought her was not just because I wanted to spend a ton of time with her, because I always love spending time with her. It was because I just wanted her to realize that all the people that I talk to online and through text messaging, they're real. They're like real people.
We are real people.
That's my favorite thing. Is finding out that these people aren't
That,
bots.
like, I'm okay.
They aren't Russian
I'm
bots.
okay.
I
Like, I'm
legitimately,
all right.
I legitimately spend more time online talking to most of these guys
Yep.
in private chat messages, in text messages with several, liking their stuff on Instagram, them liking my stuff on Instagram. I spend more time with most of the men and women in the podcasters than I do my own children. I love my children, but they're more
Clemus
interested
back right
in
now?
hearing
Is that, was
Xboxes
was that
and such.
Clemus?
But the reality is, I spend an inordinate amount of time interacting with these amazing people, and to see them
Totally.
in the flesh
Yes. It's a
is,
treat.
is the best gift that I could have ever given myself.
And they're real. They're real people.
You do have friends,
I
and they are
I have real friends, I swear.
Well, this was my first opportunity to meet a lot of these people. And you're right. We've been friends over the internet,
Yeah.
talking to each other. This is great.
Thank you, Liz, for coming and
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hey, that was one of the best conversations we've ever had on this podcast. So thank you all so much for being a part of it.
Testing 1, 2, testing. Thank you for having us on your show, Perry.
New phone. Who dis?
All right, Perry, drive, buddy. We're here.
I'm trying to, but
Where the heck are we? There's a bourbon glass with 2 straws in it. It is the PodCask Whiskey Weekend Batch 1. I want to make sure that gets in there.
you know what I did? You know what I did at the top of the show?
Probably not enough.
I said this weekend could not exist with these two guys. And I was talking about you all. And I know
Liz
I'm-
is about to get rowdy. Liz just shows up and she goes,
Liz has been rowdy since Thursday.
So what I wanted to ask you guys about was, and I'm talking like the Greeze apparently.
What I want y'all to ask about.
Hurry up, I'm going to pass out
I
before you
want to
get
talk
done.
about this weekend, but
This weekend
You mean
this
the one
weekend.
that should not exist without that guy? Joshua Steele from Buffalo Trace?
Yeah, we need to talk about Joshua Steele here.
Or
Legit.
or
no.
that guy.
This is the MVP.
No. Nothing happened this weekend
Without Jesus.
without Dixon Deadman and without Joshua Steele.
All right, so
Y'all
Joshua,
ever woke up and been in the middle of a dream?
But it actually ended up being real about you in a dream. Oh my God!
Hashtag living my best life.
You can delete both of those channels.
Just don't. If you delete my channel, I will so be pissed.
so the point in all of this,
All right, let's go ahead. Let's get down to
I
it.
was trying to ask you guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this weekend,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
has been a lot of fun. But you know what I've seen? You know
the jury's still out on that.
what are you
Who's had
talking
fun?
about?
It's
Tell me
actually,
who's had
it's
fun.
actually not. The jury's not out.
No, where's the jury?
This is real big fun.
Who's had fun? Can we talk to Joshua? He knows more things than we do.
I just want to say, thank you all so much for building this community, for allowing us to come together and be a part of something that is so cool.
The community built itself. I mean, these people are who they are because that's just who they are. I think the community exists because people are tired of being pretentious. They're tired of trying to
People
pretend
are
to be
upset.
people that they are
People
not.
are saying things like 4-year-old whiskey.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm trying to, but I don't
It's
know
real
who
hard
gave
with
Will a
Will.
microphone.
I'm gonna go ahead. So there's a lot of different mentalities you can take with whiskey, and I'm gonna go ahead and say that we just found the people that are good. I don't think we created that. I think that they were that. I think that they just finally found a community and an outlet that could exist in that, and that's what I will say about that. That's it.
And I think that's all that matters. So
Can
we
let
are gonna.
Joshua talk because he needs drinks.
I really wanted Joshua to talk, but I don't think right now's the time.
Look at Bob Little.
Hey, Josh, thank you for being on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I want to wrap this up by just saying that there are 30 of us here this weekend. There may be mutual connections that have existed before this weekend, but I feel like after tomorrow, after Sunday is what I'm talking about, I could text anybody in this group and say, I hope you're doing okay. And that would be enough. Bourbonshop.threadless.com is where you can head if you want to find all of our apparel and merch. At My Bourbon Pod is where you can find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also email us. This is mybourbonshop@gmail.com. If you have questions or comments for the show, you can head to patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast if you would like to be a patron of the show for as little as $1 a month. Give us a 5-star rate and review on iTunes. You can head to youtube.com/thisismybourbonpodcast. I do live streams every Thursday night. Hit that bell notification as well if you would like to see when I'm going live, and as well for when we have new episodes coming out. That about does it for me. I know this episode was pretty dang crazy.
That is an understatement.
I'm going to say a curse word now. Don't edit this out.
Fart.
Shit.
And that about does it for this week's episode of This Is My Bourbon Podcast.
Who's to say, Perry?
Who's to say? I will see you next week, but until then, I'm Perry, and this is My Bourbon Podcast.